Friedberg, is if you look, the proof is in the pudding. Trump, we find out on Saturday morning that Trump is, has lost and Biden has won. And 48 hours later, we find out Pfizer has 90% efficacy on their vaccine. Obviously, these two things are highly correlated. Biden has already delivered the vaccine in just 48 hours. And then today, we got the rapid testing has been approved by the FDA. I mean, look at this. If at this rate, Biden's going to cure global warming by the end of the year.
Look, first off, I think it's a little...
It is pretty paradoxical that the vaccine news came 48 hours.
Yeah, and I don't think it's paradoxical. I mean, that was crazy. I mean, there's supposed to be an October surprise, not a November surprise. I think if Trump has any legitimate argument about being done dirty in this election, it is over this vaccine news because, the Chinese announced it 3 hours after Biden's declared president. Pfizer announces it a day after Biden's declared president. I mean, when Trump went around was campaigning saying a vaccine was mere weeks away, everyone thought that was bullshit. But as it turns out, he was telling the truth. And if those guys had announced it, Jason, like you were saying, 2 weeks before the election, it might have changed this thing.
But you guys
that might have
100%. And this is not something he can go to the courts. It's not like he can go to the courts and get the election recounted or overturned because of this. So it's not something that's legally actionable. But I do think that on this news alone, Trump in 4 years will be able to claim on some level that this was a stolen election.
But couldn't the same be said about Hillary's email server, right? So
yes,
like
100%.
That news came 100%. Out and it was timed around the election. And I do think that there was a concerted effort to not let the progress with COVID get in the way of the election in any way, biased it either way. And I think it's pretty reasonable and fair to say, let's just not make this part of the news cycle leading into the election. And this was expected. If you guys go back a couple of podcasts, you had a prediction on when we would have a vaccine. I think I predicted end of September because of the way that they set up the production cycle in parallel with the testing cycle and the way that they were fast tracking a lot of the testing in a way that wasn't normal for this sort of a development. And it was going to happen this fall. If I'm an executive at one of these companies, I don't want my vaccine to become a politicized event, right? I just want to be I think it's the reasonable thing to say, let's just put it on hold. Let's deal with it all after the election. We're still moving forward. We're not holding anything up in terms of production and getting this thing across the finish line. It's just the announcement of where we are. So why make that part of the news cycle, And I think people learned their lesson with Hillary's server last time. It's this one news, bombshell drops in the news cycle, spins up, and she loses the election. Everyone blames her losing the election for that coming out. No one wants to be culpable for that, right? I'm a Pfizer exec. I'm just trying to make fucking medicine. I don't want to be on the hook for
said another way,
someone winning or losing an election.
Said another way, Chamath, nobody wants to go to a Warriors finals game versus the Lakers and have the refs decide the game in the final couple of minutes. So do you think, Chamath, this is, if you were running Pfizer, if you were on the board of Pfizer and you have this information and it can come out in this 2-week window at any time, what decision would you make, Chamath?
Well, just imagine that the vaccine was 90% ineffective and it was announced 2 weeks before the election. You'd have an entire cohort of people saying this was meant to basically sabotage the election in the other direction. So the point is, it's a no-win situation. The only answer is to wait until after the election, because that's the only way that you can actually say, we were being impartial. So I'm sympathetic to this idea that all the news had to wait 2 or 3 days. Or maybe it was 2 or 3 weeks. Now, knowing in advance what the answer was, obviously you can read into that. But I think even if it was 90% ineffective, it should have waited till after the election as well.
Sacks, I just think that I don't get the sense that you do agree with that, Sacks.
Well, let's put it this way. I mean, we know from our time working in large companies that it takes them weeks to even approve a press release. And so Pfizer had this news weeks ago. Now, I understand their reason for not wanting to appear to be influencing the outcome of the election. So that's why they held on to it. I think everybody saw the way that Facebook was scapegoated 4 years ago for the election, and no one wants to no corporation wants to put themselves in that position of being accused of affecting the election outcome one way or another. I'm sure that's why they did it as opposed to a conspiracy against Trump. But, this news was available. I think we will find out weeks ago. And so I guess you'd have to blame or there'd be some culpability on the part of Trump's election team or, his head of the FDA or what have you. They must have known some of this information, and you would think they would have done a better job getting it out there.
No, he did say at every rally, it's just around the corner. It's just around the corner. We're rounding the corner.
And we all thought it was bullshit. You thought it was bullshit. We thought it was bullshit, right?
And you know why we thought it was bullshit?
Well, because Trump does have a tendency towards hyperbole.
Hyperbole. On Trump's most honest day, he's hyperbolic. On Trump's average day, he is lying incessantly. So if anything, if he was right, and he was right that we were turning the corner and the vaccine was coming and it was going to be beautiful, a beautiful, perfect vaccine, and everybody was going to get it, he's paying the price for being a liar for 4 years.
Right. But it's the kind of thing where
he's the boy who cried wolf.
Well, and so does the media, by the way. But yeah, look, in order for a piece of news this big to be believed before the election, it can't come from a candidate. And it's pretty amazing that none of this news got out there through some other source. You would think that some of the people on the healthcare task force that Trump appointed might have been, surfacing this or paying attention to it. Maybe Pfizer did a really good job hiding it. I don't know. But it is pretty amazing that it didn't come out sooner.
Well, the other crazy thing is even the Pfizer team didn't exactly know what was going on. The head of vaccine research, she said, we're not part of the federal government's, warp speed program. And then 2 days later, Pfizer was like, actually, we are part of the warp speed program. It's just that, we're a supplier. The whole point is that I'm not sure that Pfizer actually knew 2 weeks in advance, David. I think that they were probably trickling stuff together, and they probably had a sense of it at the end of the last week. I'm surprised it didn't leak, to be quite honest. That's the more shocking thing, which means that it was probably something that very, very, very few people knew about.
Well, the CEO put out a statement saying that he would be first in line to take the new vaccine, which I thought was, a great statement because a lot of people were questioning whether, how real it was or how rushed it was. But in order for him to do that, and in order just to get like a press release announced, I don't think that's the kind of thing that comes together in the, 1 or 2 day period between the announcement of Joe Biden winning the election and their announcement. So, I just think they had to know weeks ago.
I just want to say to my Greek brother, Alberto Bourlas, the CEO of Pfizer, a great Greek who has led to the saving of the world. Upa, Calacanis. Saganaki is on me.
If you take 90% efficacy and you assume at most in the United States 40% of people will take the actual vaccination, you'll have 36% of the population covered, which is still not enough to get the R naught less than 1.
Is that correct, Friedberg? What do you think?
I don't know. I'm not an epidemiologist. I'd have to.
Does it sound directionally correct to you that people in the States are going to take it? I think if you don't take it, isn't this like a...
everyone who's high risk will take it.
Yeah. And as of about 2 months ago, it was estimated that 30% of people on the East Coast had already developed immunity due to the seroprevalence studies that showed antibodies. On the West Coast, it was much lower, closer to 3%. You could estimate based on the growth in cases since then, and assuming we're kind of missing a bunch, we're probably on a national basis, we were at 10% back then. On a national basis, you're probably up to 20% right now of Americans have already been effectively immunized by getting the virus. So, if that's true, then you're at 55% and you're getting pretty close to an ability to kind of inhibit this thing from spreading rapidly again.